Alright, this is a battle report. 1,000 points. British versus German of Warlord Games is Bolt Action. It's a World War II 28mm miniatures game, and this was our first time trying it out in the comfort of our own home. Both of us had played at Gen Con. I got to play 2 or 3 games in 2012, and my buddy Dan, who played here, got to play last year in 2013, and I got to play a game at Gen Con. Basically, those demo games convinced me that it was a great game to pick up, and I was really looking forward to this. It's taken us a long time to get all of our stuff together. I actually copped out and had someone put my infantry together, and I think it was one of the greatest decisions I've made in my entire life, because from what he told me, it was very difficult to put together these the infantry. I'm playing the British, and I had them put together I bought 2 boxes of the base British infantry. I think it's the late war, and so about 50 guys, just so I'd have enough core infantry that I really would never have to buy anymore, and I could just augment with special teams and everything like that. So he did a great job, but he said that it was very fiddly. He had to do a lot of green stuff work on the shoulders, and they look great. I can't rag on the actual models themselves and how they turned out, but he said it was very difficult to put them together. Very spindly in terms of some of the weapons, but we're talking about 28mm World War II. We're not talking about 32mm, Space Marines or Orcs or something like that. And I'd say I've been spoiled by the Games Workshop kits because they have consistently been very easy to put together, with the exception of the Dark Elf Corsairs and that I've experienced. I mean, I have played Beastmen, and very easy to put together, and looks really good. You're going to have to green stuff here and there, but from what I looked at from these miniatures, he was green stuffing everything. So anyway, really looking forward to this game. I have played not a ton, but I've played quite a few games of AT-43. Bolt Action reminds me a great deal of both Confrontation and especially AT-43, which I think was a really good rule set. Bolt Action, I think, I would say, even after just these 3 or 4 plays, and especially after this one, I think Bolt Action is a better game. You're not fiddling with the cards, and you don't have any way to spend command points to make things happen in the game, which I kind of missed a little bit, but at the same time, I was able to get stuck into this, start moving units around, firing stuff, and get rolling right away. So that I really liked. Now, let me just touch on the scenario that we were playing here. So we're going with the Envelopment. This one is one maybe we should have not played the first time, but it was really fun. It was fun for me. I was the attacker. My goal was to get my units off the table on my opponent's, either get my units onto my opponent's half or get them off the table on that side. So I really wanted to move very quickly, and I had some units that could do that very well. My army was just basically a stock army. I had a 1 unit of 10 veteran infantry with a Bren gun, and then I had a small unit of 5 that I put into a Bren carrier. The guy at the booth at Gen Con in 2012, when I first bought my army, was like, he was a British guy, and he was like, oh, you got to get these Bren carriers. And I looked at him like, oh, that's not very sexy, and it doesn't look like it's going to kick any ass. And they don't, but they're very, very good, and you'll see in this scenario. I really think they are a defining unit for the British Army, at least the one from the back of the book. So a couple Bren carriers. I had a mortar team, machine gun team. I took a Cromwell and I took a 16-pound anti-tank gun, which is gigantic, very deadly when it hits, but really slow, which for this game was not too good. So it was a little bit of a mirror match because we kind of had the same armies, but it did feel pretty different. I mean, he took a unit of SS, so he had some elite troops out there, and then he had some Waffen, or no, I'll have to look at him. Okay, so this was after most of the first turn. So Wehrmacht, sorry. So let me just run down what you're looking at here. So when I start in this scenario with an envelopment, I don't start with anything on the board, and I start with a preparatory bombardment, which did very well. You can see the blast markers. I'm going to say blast markers throughout this. In bolt action, it's actually pin markers. I'm never not going to say blast markers because I played too much epic 40k and it's just stuck in my head. So I'm just going to call them blast markers because that's what they are to me. And plus we have what looks like blast markers. So I was able to put a bunch of pin counters on his units with that. It didn't kill anybody. I think it did one casualty that was saved by the medic, and that's something I want to touch on in terms of a theme going through the game, is that you're not going to cause a lot of casualties with artillery and mortars that I've seen so far. Few games. So on the far left, behind a woods, that piece of construction paper is woods, is my 10-man squad. And again, none of my stuff is painted. That's going to get ameliorated as soon as I can. My 16-pounder, I moved on the table. Now, as you can see, if you've played the game before, I have drawn a ton of dice. He started on the table. You can see there's a couple of his dice, maybe 3 of his dice on the table. We were drawing out of the cup, and it was just green, which was my color, over and over and over. So I was able to bring a ton of stuff on. So on the far right, you see I've got both Bren carriers. One of those has no troops in it. It just has a medium machine gun, a Bren gun in it. And what I was thinking is I was going to run everything. He kind of spread everything out on the left-hand side and left the right open. So I was going to run everything on the right and then use my Cromwell and my 16-pounder as kind of a, sacrificial lambs, if you will. Now, if it was a real envelopment, you'd want to get your tanks across as quick as possible and then let the infantry do whatever they need to do to mop up. But in this case, I was using the tank to shelter the infantry so they could get off the board. So I ran on the right-hand side as far as my guys could go. I had my sniper kind of getting in position. I wanted him to feel like I was going to try to do something and shoot at his units. But if I could have gone through this scenario without firing a shot and still won, that was fine too. So you can see he has so he has his SS, he has a Hetzer, he's got a mortar, he's got a Wehrmacht unit, he has a smaller AT gun, and a sniper and a machine gun. Now we have these 40k ruined buildings, which worked really well. Some of the teams where we put on those, I think that's Rendra bases, those don't stay up too well. So what I did is distribute a little bit of blue tack, so when we needed to put a guy or a team that was on a multi-man base up on a ladder or up on a ledge, we could blue tack them on there, because most of the time, if they're up there, they're going to sit there for the whole game. You got a machine gun, you put him in a good position, he's not going to move. So this was the first turn. There wasn't any casualties in the first turn at all. It was kind of not a lot of shooting. I think the Hetzer fired. Yeah, the Hetzer fired at the 16-pounder, but didn't do any damage. So this is just another shot of the right-hand side. You can see I ran the little dice. I'll say run for those units. They're coming on. They're trying to haul ass across the field. So sniper, Vickers machine gun. That's my in the middle there. Is my second lieutenant and my free artillery observer, and then that's my mortar team next to that, and then the Cromwell. the Bren carrier with the dice, which is the black blob, with the dice, which is a confrontation die in there, that's the one with the light machine, or the medium machine gun. So this is getting, I think this is turn 1 on the left-hand side. We just have my 10-man unit. Now, I didn't know what to do with those guys because the SS had taken up, taken that building right on the upper left, and there was no going into that. They would get shot down to a man probably trying to assault that building. So I didn't want to do that. So this is a blurry shot of the turn 1 of the German side. And I was trying to get kind of artsy here and, you know, look down the barrel of the 16-pounder and at the Hetzer and everything. And really it just showed parts of my crappy basement there, and didn't look too good. But cool shot if I can get that. And with the Cromwell, here we are. So Cromwell's looking at, I believe that is an artillery observer in that building, that little flash of silver in there. So he was getting a bead on them, which would prove semi-fruitful. So this is starting to get into turn 2, and I believe the beginning of turn 3. Now, because you're drawing all these dice, the turns flow. I mean, yes, you have an end of turn where you make a couple checks on stuff, and you might remove some markers and fire off artillery and everything like that. But you'd basically just keep going. So this game took a long time. It was about 4 hours. At 1,000 points, it really shouldn't be that long, but we had to look up a lot of things in the rules. What does soft skin mean? What does open top mean? What does this mean? I messed up a couple rules with the Cromwell. I moved him too far because tracked vehicles move 12, but Cromwells are slow, so they only move 6 on advance, etc. I moved my tank up to kind of buffer and get to point-blank range against that machine gun team that's in the middle there, blue tacked to that 40K terrain. And I fired both my machine guns, coaxial and my forward mounted, and my main gun, and did no damage at all. I didn't even get a pin marker, I think, or a blast marker on them. So I moved up to point-blank range to really give it to them. Infantry in buildings is very difficult to take out, especially veteran infantry, because you've got to roll a 5 to do any damage. But if you can hit it, nail them with a bunch of pins, it can still make it so they're really ineffective. My opponent, I have to say, probably, I think his quote at the end of the game was that he had the worst German troops in the war. He kept failing his pin tests whenever he would throw orders. It was over and over. I think the Wehrmacht in the back took 1 move. I think even one time his like 8-pound his anti-tank gun failed. The machine gun team failed in a position where they were just going to rake down my guys. It was comical. The SS did fine, but so he was kind of out of position. He started to move across the board, but we had I moved up my Cromwell and I exposed my flank to that Hetzer, but he turned to expose his flank, which is a very soft flank, to my 16-pounder. So on the second turn, he used his forward artillery observer to place an artillery token on my 16-pounder. So what that'll do is at the end of the turn, it will, or the beginning of the next turn, I can't remember, it will check for the artillery. Unfortunately for him, he had it out there a few turns and it didn't do anything at all. And then when it did, which we'll see later, it didn't do what he wanted. So I wasn't going to move that thing because I had such a sweet shot on that Hetzer and the side armor, because Hetzer's side armor counts as back armor. So you get I believe it's a +2 or a +4 to get a critical hit or penetrate. So as you can see, I moved my big team of infantry away from those woods, and I was going to loop them around, get them around that hill so that they could run off the board. And you can see I have one of my Bren carriers ran off on turn 2 immediately. They just shot down the board and had a unit in there, so that was two units that I had off, which was I believe it was 6 points already by the end of turn 2. So I didn't waste any time. I got my Piet team, my machine gun team, and my sniper team running off the field. And here's just another shot of the situation. Now in the bottom right corner I have my forward air artillery observer. I keep saying air observer. My forward artillery observer, who's free for the British Army. That's their special ability. And he's ready to do a lot of damage. And the Cromwell's waiting to get shot. That's a shot of the SS inside the farmhouse. Now, you'll notice some of the buildings that I have, they aren't painted, most of them, but a few of them are. These are Ertl, like from like a farm set from a company called Ertl. In the 90s, they came out with a bunch of these toy kits, and they work really well. They're really good for 25 to 28 millimeter. I bought a bunch of them for like playing Legends of the Old West, and it wasn't Gutshot, it was the other one. I can't remember it now. The one by War Games Foundry, that's pretty fun, but no one ever dies in it. I can't remember. So I bought these buildings. They're really good. If you can pick them up on eBay, it's well worth it. They're solid. My kids have thrown a beating on these. Not the painted ones, but the unpainted ones, and they still are 80% combat effective. Another shot of the Hetzer lining up for a shot that he's not going to take. He missed. So what happened here is, in the next slide, you'll see both tanks have been destroyed. And I want to explain quickly what happened here. I ran my Cromwell up, and I destroyed his AT gun. I fired everything at it, and I destroyed it. We left it there because they could recrew it. The crew was dead, but he could have recrewed it. They didn't recrew it. They ran up with that unit of Wehrmacht. They finally passed a pin check, and they fired Panzerfaust, I believe 4 Panzerfausts into my Cromwell. And at that range, they were able to penetrate and set it on fire and blow it up. So after that, I made my roll for my 16-pounder, hit the Hetzer, and it was immediately destroyed. So no armor left on the field except for my 1 Bren carrier. And in a way, the 16-pound anti-tank is sort of a piece of armor, but for infantry, I mean, it's not gonna be able to do much except survive when shot at because of that gun shield. So the Bren was gonna suppress, and this is, I believe, getting on turn 4 or 5. So the scenario goes to turn 6, and then after that, you start to roll the die, and 50% of the time, the game's over. So that was the situation there. He knew that he didn't have Panzerfaust, he had no AT gun, and he had really no way of taking out that Bren gun, or the Bren carrier. But he was going to try anyway, or try something. That's another wider shot of the damage. You can see the Bren carrier on top of that hill. I was using it to suppress the machine gun team, which didn't really work out very well, because it does get 4 shots at that team, and so my other infantry could get off the map. So he moved his... Alright, so this is a funny shot. Things went bad from bad to worse for the Germans here. So he moved his SS unit up to start to intercept my units running off the field. He ran out of that building, and when he rolled his artillery check, I got to move it like 12 inches or something like that, or 20 inches, something like that. I'll have to look that up. And so I moved it into the middle of the SS, and then the turn before, my forward artillery observer placed a token on the SS. So they got hit twice, and it spread so wide that almost every unit that he had left, infantry-wise, was hit by at least one of the artillery strikes. So you can see all the blast markers on his guys. Some units had 4, some units had 3, a couple had 2, and he was just shaking his head like, oh my gosh. No casualties though. So note that those aren't going to do a lot of casualties, which I think kind of solves what the 40K problem that I read about. I had never really experienced it, where ordnance could blast the crap out of your army before you even took your first turn. You'll never see that in it'll blast them, but they're still going to be there. They just may not be able to take the orders that you want. So this is a situation, I believe, at turn 6, which we ended the game at turn 6. So my Bren carrier had turned off that hill and was running to get off the table. One of my other teams, I think that's my mortar team, was trying to run off the table. His Wehrmacht unit was moving up to try to shoot at the Bren carrier. Now, the Bren carrier they did fire at, I think one time, with something that could take it out, that could penetrate it, and it did a Reese move. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The Wehrmacht assaulted the Bren carrier, and it did its Reese move, which means when it's assaulted or shot at, it can do a backwards normal move. And it shot out of there, and they weren't ever able to catch up to it. So those are really brutal. What I forgot to tell him, and he didn't know, we just didn't know, is that you can suppress or add pin markers to one of those Bren carriers, even if you can't penetrate it because it's open top. So I'm sure I'll remember that for next time. So that's just a close-up. He's moving his stuff forward. His sniper and his Wehrmacht are trying to just get close to my guys on that far right flank to try to stop them from running off the table. Okay, so that was the end of the game. And we rolled, and I won an astounding victory. I think he got 4 to 6 VPs, and I had, you know, just in the 20s or close to 30. I got a ton of stuff off the map. I don't think he made any mistakes that, you know, I think this was a learning game and we just didn't know what to expect. I just looked at the board and was, hey, I can just run off the board, and he didn't have stuff over there to suppress my units and make it so I couldn't pass my pin check. So that's the key, I think, to that scenario. I'm really interested in trying it as the defender. So quickly, my thoughts and feelings about bolt action so far. After a few plays, this one was in the comfort of my own home, and we got time to look at the rules instead of being in a con and having people tell you what to do and helping you and stuff. I mean, like AT-43, the play of the game is very smooth. You pull out a die. If it's yours, you move a unit. You don't have a lot of choice. There's not a lot of brain burning. You sit there and go, what do I want to do? Based on what's happened this turn, the turn before, and whatever. So you can really react to what's going on. It's smooth. It's excellent. In terms of like firing and all that stuff, it's very clear, especially for experienced wargamers. I mean, the rules are tight. There's lots of little rules like Reese and open top and soft skin and all that stuff. This is good and bad. Some people may think, oh, there's a little bit too much in here. I think they balanced it pretty well. There's a few things like if you were the Germans and you forgot Hitler's buzzsaw rule or something, that would suck. But you just have to remember it and practice playing. That's what all these games are about. Is the more you put into this type of game, like anything else, Warhammer Fantasy Battle, the more you're going to get out of it. It's a great representation of the genre. And for me, it fulfills. I can put away and have already my AT-43 stuff and not try to force people to play that don't even know what the hell it is, and play bolt action, because unfortunately AT-43 is long dead. And then if I want to play 28mm World War II, it's very good. Last note is the challenging miniatures. If you're going to get into this game, and this isn't a review of the game, but the plastic kits, while excellent, are very, very difficult to put together. They went for the customization for the World War II bus, which I completely understand, rather than the ease of putting stuff together. Like when I get one of the new Dark Elf kits or something, I'll put it together and be like, wow, that was awesome. So the miniatures do look really good. No complaints there. The weapons are real spindly and fragile because of the plastic, whatever. But again, that's what it is. It's 28mm. It's not 32mm with just these giant guns that are as big as the people's torsos and stuff like that. So that's it. Yeah, let me know what you think.